Major Payne feels less like a comedy and more like a drill sergeant shouting punchlines. A Marine walks into a classroom and treats it like a war zone. Kids get lined up, broken down, and reshaped into a squad. Even bedtime stories sound like threats. Discipline drills play out like survival training. But underneath all that yelling, the movie is running on a very different plan. Major Payne wasn't even built around Damon Wayans at first. He stepped in, and the entire tone of the film snapped into a new shape. Even the casting of the kids came with one strict, non-negotiable rule, and that alone tells you everything about the mindset behind the film. Dr. Phillips, too, started as a completely different idea, originally meant for a totally different kind of actor before being reworked. This is a movie that looks like chaos on the surface, but underneath it runs with the precision of a drill, and by the end, its legacy turns out to be more complicated than it first appears. At first glance, Major Payne feels like a product of the 1990s. A loud, aggressive military figure gets dropped into a school full of kids, and everything runs on shouting, exaggerated reactions, and that signature 90s style of comedy. But the core of the story is much older than that. Its foundation goes all the way back to 1955 with The Private War of Major Benson, starring Charlton Heston. That earlier film already had the blueprint. A strict career soldier clashes with authority, ends up at a school, and tries to whip a group of unruly boys into shape. Even the emotional arc was already there. The officer softens, the boys grow, and a quiet romance develops in the background. The 1995 version didn't need to reinvent the structure, but it did shift one key element. In the original, the authority figure opposing the officer was a traditional mother superior. In Major Payne, that role becomes Emily Walburn, played by Karen Parsons. That one change shifts the entire emotional rhythm. Now, the tension isn't just about discipline versus chaos, it becomes a sharper clash between harsh, old-school control and a more compassionate, modern approach to raising children. The skeleton of the story came from the 50s, but the attitude was pure 90s, louder, rougher, and shaped by a different era of comedy and representation. Once the structure was in place, the biggest question became simple: who could actually play Major Payne? And surprisingly, Damon Wayans wasn't the first choice. That role was initially meant for Martin Lawrence. At the time, Martin Lawrence was exploding in popularity. His sitcom was huge, and his stand-up style was fast, loud, and unpredictable. If he had taken the role, the film likely would have leaned heavily into chaos. The character might have felt more explosive, more improvisational, like someone barely holding himself together. But scheduling got in the way. Lawrence had Bad Boys lined up, and that took priority. So the film had to look elsewhere. And that's where everything changed. When Damon Wayans stepped in, he didn't just replace the lead, he reshaped the character entirely. His version of Major Payne is tighter, sharper, and more controlled. Instead of feeling chaotic, he feels precise. His movements are stiff, his voice clipped, his presence calculated. He doesn't feel like a man improvising madness, he feels like a man trained into it. The same role in different hands could have been wild and loose. With Wayans, it became mechanical and just grounded enough to hold the film together. And once he took the role, he didn't treat it like just another comedy. He approached it like the military aspect had to be believable first. He spent weeks preparing like a real drill instructor, learning posture, movement, and the way someone like Major Payne dominates space. He studied real Marines closely, and it shows. Then he layered comedy on top of that structure. Real drill instructors don't just repeat lines, they react, adapt, and pressure people in real time. Wayans already understood that rhythm from sketch comedy and stand-up, so once the foundation was in place, he started playing within it. That's why the character never feels static. His discipline stays consistent, but his intimidation keeps shifting and evolving. That energy didn't always stay on set either. According to Damon Wayans Jr., his father sometimes carried that drill sergeant mindset home. He would still act like Major Payne, even making his own son do push-ups. As a joke, his son later said it turned him into the most ripped 8-year-old around. This wasn't just a performance, it was something built from real structure and then bent into comedy. Originally, the filmmakers wanted the kids to genuinely feel intimidated by him. There was even an early idea to have Wayans stay in character around the child actors, keeping his distance so the tension would feel real on screen. The logic made sense. If the kids felt uneasy in real life, that energy would carry into the film. But there was one problem. The kids already knew exactly who Damon Wayans was. They didn't see Major Payne, they saw the guy from In Living Color. More specifically, they wanted to see Homie the Clown. Instead of being intimidated, they kept asking him to do the voice in routines. That completely broke the illusion. It became impossible to maintain that strict, intimidating presence between takes. Eventually, Wayans dropped the full drill sergeant approach and started bonding with them instead. And that ended up helping the movie. The kids loosened up, he loosened up, and the dynamic became more natural. The film didn't actually need the kids to fear him constantly. It needed them to be confused by him, annoyed by him, entertained by him, and gradually drawn toward him. That shift made the relationships feel more real and ultimately made the movie work better. One of the most memorable visual moments comes early on when the boys get their heads shaved. Instantly, they stop looking like a group of individuals and start resembling a unit. It's a quick joke, but the production took it seriously. Those haircuts were real. The actors playing the cadets were only cast if they agreed in advance to shave their heads completely. No compromises. Parents had to sign off before casting was finalized, and at least one young actor reportedly dropped out because of that requirement. For the kids who stayed, it wasn't exactly a fun experience either. Stephen Martini later joked that he didn't exactly love that first day. And for a child actor, shaving your head isn't something you leave on set, it follows you home. What looks like a quick visual gag on screen came with a real commitment behind the scenes. The setting of the film also feels almost too perfect to be real, but it actually is. Madison Preparatory was filmed at the Miller School of Albemarle, a real boarding school founded in 1878. The architecture, the atmosphere, the rigid structure, it was all already there. The film didn't need to create the setting, it just dropped Major Payne into it and let him disrupt everything. Even more interesting, the same campus had already been used in another film, Toy Soldiers, where it was portrayed as a school under siege by terrorists. So by the time Major Payne used it, the location already had a strange cinematic history of controlled environments falling into chaos. Then there's Dr. Phillips, who feels like he wandered in from a completely different movie. While Major Payne operates like a weapon, Phillips drifts through scenes talking about butterflies, completely disconnected from the chaos around him. Originally, the role was imagined for Leslie Nielsen, which makes perfect sense. Nielsen had built a career on playing calm authority figures in absurd situations. If he had taken the role, the humor would have been bigger and more traditionally deadpan. Instead, the role went to William Hickey, and that changed everything. Hickey didn't play Phillips as confident, he played him as fragile, distracted, and slightly off balance. Instead of being a solid counterpoint to Major Payne, he feels like someone who might float away if the tension gets too high. That made the character funnier in a much stranger, more unpredictable way. One of the film's most intense moments, when Major Payne pulls a grenade pin with his teeth, is also one of its least realistic. In reality, grenade pins require serious force to remove. Trying to do that with your teeth would likely end badly. On top of that, the grenade itself is painted blue, which indicates a training device, not a real explosive. So the entire scene is built on illusion, but realism isn't the point. The moment exists to show the kind of man Major Payne is, or at least the kind of man he wants everyone to believe he is. Looking back, the film also quietly introduced a few future recognizable faces. Chris Owen appears as the awkward, nervous cadet, a role that foreshadows the same energy he later brought to American Pie. Orlando Brown, only 7 years old at the time, also appears in one of his earliest roles. At the time, they blend into the background. Years later, they stand out as early glimpses of careers that were just beginning. When Major Payne was released in 1995, it performed solidly at the box office, earning around $30 million. Critics were less kind, often dismissing it as loud and formulaic. But Roger Ebert stood out, giving it a positive review and praising Damon Wayans for turning the character into something more than just a shouting stereotype. After its theatrical run, the film found a second life. Through VHS, DVD, and constant television airings, it slowly built a loyal audience. It became one of those movies people kept rediscovering, quoting, rewatching, and passing along. Over time, it stopped feeling like a one-time release and started feeling permanent. That long afterlife even extended internationally. In places like Germany, it became a cult favorite, despite not having a major theatrical release. Its popularity grew through repetition, not hype. It didn't explode overnight, it stuck around until people claimed it. But not everything about its legacy stayed simple. Years later, Orlando Brown made troubling and unverified allegations connected to the film and Damon Wayans. The allegations spread online but were never supported with evidence. Wayans later denied the accusations completely. At the same time, he spoke about Brown with concern rather than anger, saying he still cared about him and believed he wasn't in a good place. He also explained why he hadn't reached out, suggesting that their relationship wasn't close enough, and that he wasn't sure how it would be received. Because of that, the film's legacy became more complicated. The comedy still holds up, but it no longer feels entirely untouched. And yet, Major Payne endures, not because it's subtle, but because it fully commits to what it is. It didn't need to dominate its opening weekend. It just kept showing up, getting quoted, and becoming part of people's memories. Some movies win big once and disappear. This one didn't. It won in the reruns.